In Mecca Township, Ohio, a quiet place with just a few thousand residents, which also happens to be just steps away from the second largest lake in the state, well, that's where the sport of fishing changed forever.
The Erie Dearie Fishing Lure that was designed, built, manufactured right here in Mecca Township that had a huge part in the popularity of walleye fishing on Lake Erie. It really put a pin in Port Clinton, Ohio, made it the walleye capital of the world, and great to celebrate a little bit of fun history here in Mecca Township and how we were part of making that happen.
If you've never heard of the Erie Dearie, ask someone who likes to fish, and then ask someone who likes to fish for walleye.
I was at Bass Pro Shops this morning buying some fishing line, and a gentleman walked up to the counter, "Hey, do you guys carry Erie Dearie fishing lures?" So even today, even though this lure was, I used them in the early 80s, they've been around forever, but even today now, 40 some years later, there are still people out there looking for them.
Greg Chopko, a Mecca Township trustee, attributes that one lure as the bait for his passion for fishing that still grabs him to this day.
When I was 12, 13 years old, that was my life. Fishing was my life. We were up there 3 or 4 days a week, casting Erie Dearies, catching walleyes, and that's really how I spent my youth. It did foster a love of the outdoors. That's still a big part of who I am today.
They are looking for what Captain Dan Galbincia and his wife Helen invented at their home while running a bait shop and raising children. Dan and Kathy and their siblings had a front row seat on the roller coaster of success.
I said, "You use that, huh?" And they said, "Yeah, it's the best lure ever made." I said, "My dad was the inventor."
So my mom was, she was the brains behind the whole business, and he was the one out having all the fun. But you can't call it work because he was having fun every day. He got to go out there and limit out and just do what he did best. He thought like a fish.
And that's why Captain Dan's lure became the only lure if you wanted to win walleye. Dan took a standard spinning lure and added forward weights to pull it through the water in a realistic way. In 1956, he created Old Reliable. By 1960, the design was tested and proven, and the Erie Dearie spell was cast, as was the name.
My dad always wanted to go to Lake Erie. Just every day he'd say, "I'm gonna go up the lake tomorrow." And she would get mad and she says, "You just go to your Lake Erie Dearie," and that's how the name became Erie Dearie.
Captain Dan created quite the Erie Dearie Wake in Port Clinton, Ohio. The walleye spawn there and return each season. All eyes were always on Captain Dan and his charter boat.
It was one of those deals where the people that fished and followed him out went to the stores and wanted to buy Erie Dearies, and he basically forced the stores to buy them and market them. And Port Clinton was our biggest sales area. But then Cabela's got on board, Bass Pro, Gander Mountain. Everybody that sold fishing lures sold Erie Dearies.
In later years, those eyes belonged to his grandchildren.
One of my favorite memories is actually here in Mecca. I wasn't able to make it out on the boat often because I was younger and stuff, but he still found a way to teach me how to cast. So in our front yard, he would put a weight at the end of the line there, and he would teach us how to cast. And so, I can owe that to him for teaching.
Yeah, along those lines, at Packard Music Hall years ago, they had a kids casting contest, and I was the only girl and I won. And that was all because of him and taking the time to teach us how to cast.
For decades, Dan and Helen ran their business from Mecca, Ohio. Family, friends, and community members all have stories about painting and packing and purchasing the famous lures.
So even though the lure was invented in 1960, there's still YouTube videos, how-to videos, just even beyond Lake Erie. It spans across the world, really. So it's really neat to see, just even today, all of the different videos and people still talking about my grandfather and his lure.
You know, there were members of the community that came here and worked and assembled them, assembled the lures, painted the lures. It was a huge part of the township, and it brought the community together.
I grew up, shipping out of my grandma's house. She had an office back there, and I remember, we would get an order from Cabela's, and I'd have to run into their basement, and they had boxes and boxes and boxes just of every single size and color of lure, t-shirts, hats, everything. And so I would be the one that ran down, got everything, brought it up for the other people to put in boxes and ship out.
Today, local leaders are joining forces to get the Erie Dearie and its birthplace, steps away from Mosquito Lake in Mecca Township, Ohio, onto the National Registry of Historic Places.
Mecca's a small little town with a lot of loving people, but it was founded right here, not in technically Port Clinton, Ashtabula, anywhere like that. It was founded right here in Mecca, and it's part of history.
And when it comes to this generation's Captain Dan, history may have taken a moment to catch up, but the feelings are right on time.
I didn't do a lot of fishing when I was younger with him. I went out a few times. It started for me after my dad's death. He died on his best friend's boat, and I couldn't see that boat go away, so I bought it. And I chartered for about 12 years. And I got to know all the same fishermen he knew. It was a real rush for somebody that knew nothing really about fishing. I got almost as good as him. But nobody will ever be as good as he was, but I learned a lot.